So good morning, guys. Today is going to be the first session that we are going to have where all of you guys are here, or at least some of you guys will be here. So right now we are not going to be too worried about who's joining in. Okay, so whoever is able to join in will are most welcome to. Those who are not, well, this session is going to be recorded. So whenever it is that you get a chance, you should definitely go over to the classroom and have a look at the recorded material. Okay. Again, so since this is going to be a recorded session, so please keep your doubts as brief as possible. Wherever you have a confusion about what is being discussed, please raise the doubt so that those people who are watching it remotely can if they have similar doubts, they will be able to have it clear at the same time. Okay. Okay, doc. Just a moment. We will give it a couple of moments so that anybody else who's joining in can come in quickly, so that we don't have to break during the presentation. If somebody is trying to get into the meeting, I suggest that when a class invite is sent out to you, please accept it on the on your calendar. So those of you who accepted it on the calendar are entering the classroom directly, the meet call directly, and those of you who have not are, I think you guys are lagging behind over there. So henceforth, just accept the invite to the call so that you guys can directly enter the call, so that we have a uninterrupted session. Okay. Anyway, so today's session we're going to start at module 2. Okay. So in module 2, the things that we will be discussing are basically the topics of valuation and dilapidation. Okay, we'll get into the details of what valuation and dilapidation are, but the first slide over here indicates to us what the syllabus is going to be, what the topics are which will be covered as a part of the syllabus. So you have the introduction to valuation, essential characteristics, classification, and the purposes of the classification. Then we have some key definitions. Then we talk about the physical and economic life of buildings. And then we talk about the architect's role in preparation of valuation and dilapidation reports and certifications. And then we have the methods of valuation, standard rent, cost of construction. All these are things we will slowly get into. But the first thing is that we have to get an introduction to the subject itself. Okay. I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
So these are the topics that we will be covering as a part of today's lesson over here. A basic introduction to valuation, what its essential characteristics are, what are the types of classifications and the purposes for its classifications. Okay. So again, we follow the same format as with the previous lessons over here. These are some important questions that we need to ask, and we will try to answer them through the course of the class itself. So what determines value? What is the difference between value, market value, and fair market value? Okay. Then what requirements and factors determine market value? what are the classifications of value, and what is valuation and why it is necessary. Okay, so let's get down to the basics of it. What is value? So when we talk about it, we consider the worth, utility, and attachment to a thing in the eyes of the person. So if we were to take any particular article, we would assign something of some sort of value to it. Like, there may be some things which you will attach a sentimental value to it, or you may attach something which is um, an antique value to it. Okay, so based on the type of article, based on the kind of attachment to the article, you will assign a certain monetary figure to what it is. All right, there will also be these kinds of articles where you would say that it is priceless, right? So priceless is basically where you cannot assign a value to an article. The exact opposite of it is worthless. Okay, where you do not wish to assign a value to the article. Understand? So there are two different things over here, and both of them stem from the idea of value, which basically is representing the worth, utility, and attachment to a particular thing. And like we and one more thing that we have to understand about value is that it can it can vary from one person to another. So if we take one particular article or an asset, it will have different values for different kinds of people. All right, so let us say for now, for example, over here, Kaban Park. So for the citizens of Bangalore, the value of Kaban Park is that it is a lung space. It has plenty of trees. It has plenty of birds, and it is a lung space, and therefore there is no value. There is actually no fixed value that you can give to it. So we will call it priceless. All right. At the same time, we have these people who we consider as builders or real estate developers. They see the parcel of land as place which can be developed. So they will assign a monetary value to it, and they will assign a possible. They will assign value to it based upon its earning capacity, how it can bring back a certain amount of returns. So again, like we say, from person to person, the concept of value will completely change. So, and then we are, because it changes from person to person, it can be considered as something purely relative. So for something to possess value, it must satisfy these following conditions. Okay, it should represent physical and emotional weightage. All right, so when we say physical and emotional weightage, we are talking about something that has physical value and something that has emotional value. Okay, it must possess economic and legal qualities. Economic and legal qualities are basically utility, demand, scarcity, and transferability of ownership. Now, utility, demand, and scarcity are concepts which you guys have already dealt with in your economics from fifth semester. So how do we define utility? It is basically the potential of an asset to perform and achieve returns in terms of monetary gain. All right, utility is basically where an asset is put to work and a person is able to achieve financial returns from it. Okay, demand basically is the requirement of such assets. All right, so if you were to consider it on a city level over here, a demand, an asset which is in demand can be considered as housing. All right. And using the same example over here, in the case of public housing or affordable housing, there is a notable scarcity. Okay. And in the final aspect of it, if there is public housing, if there is affordable housing, it stands to reason that a person should be able to purchase it, all right, and hold ownership of it. And if a person is able to hold ownership of an asset, it should also be transferable. Okay. So these four qualities are absolutely essential for any asset to hold value. Okay. And for an asset to hold value, it should also represent a function of place, purpose, and time. Now, place, purpose, and time, if if you were to define it, a place, purpose, and time is basically indicative of its utility in a time space continuum. All right. So what we consider as absolutely valuable now may not be valuable a little later. Okay. So let me give you a simple example over here. Around the years 97, 98, around the time when you guys were born, there was this small little device which was called as a pager. Okay. So a pager basically is that device which at that point of time had extreme value. It was an easy way for people to communicate messages, and it had a purpose that it would get people to call back very quickly, and it was bounded by its period in time. Okay, that was the time when the technology had evolved, where you could have a receiver but not a transmitter. Okay, so the idea of a pager is that you will be able to receive messages but you won't be able to transmit messages. Okay, so place, purpose, and time. So in that sense, the pager had, as an asset, had a value at that particular point of time. Over a period of time, the value changed because pages were replaced by cell phones were replaced by smartphones, and now we have smartphones which are being replaced by god knows what is going to be the next technology. All right. So we have described what value is over here. The next step is to find out what market value is. Okay. Because when we talk about value in its isolation, we talk about it based on a particular person. All right. When it comes to the open market, the dynamics of value completely change. Okay. So here we have to know that it cannot be confused. The basic definition of value cannot be confused with market value. Okay. So market value is basically the estimated amount for which an asset should exchange on the date of valuation between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction after proper marketing, where the parties have acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without competition. So each one of these terms determines what market value should be. Okay. So the market is estimating what amount an asset should exchange. An asset should change hands over here based on that particular date of valuation, which is basically the function of time. And it has to happen between a willing buyer and a willing seller. And it has to happen in an arm's length transaction. So when we say an arm's length transaction, we are talking about it as a purely professional interaction between two people. Okay. And after proper marketing basically indicates that the person who is selling and the person who's buying does a study of the market, understands what kind of prices are ruling at that particular point of time, and both parties have acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without competition. So without competition basically means that there isn't an auction that is happening. Market value does not take into consideration how people function in an auction. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of what auctions are like. All right. So basically, a product is put up, an asset is put up, and people are invited to bid openly. All right. So in the case of market value, there is no competition. So it is a set value, and you can negotiate up and down a bit, from that market value, but it is not considered as a competition between multiple bidders. So for an asset to possess market value, the following must be satisfied. Like we talked earlier, willingness of the vendor and the seller to enter into a transaction. Okay. They have to enter willingly. They should be aware of what the conditions are, and accordingly, they should come to an agreement. Neither side should be under compulsion or should be coerced into a transaction. You would have heard of a lot of stories where there are land mafias which are coercing people into giving up their lands for whatever be the purpose. Okay, some such cases can be considered as these cases can be considered as coercion, and therefore there will be no market value which will be attached to it. Okay, so if you're being coerced, it basically means that you are being lowballed and you are going to end up giving away your land for a very small piece of very small sum of money. Okay, so urgent necessity of sale or purchase is to be discarded. So here it should be noted that the vendor is not dependent on the sale of this asset for his or her financial requirements. Okay, so irrespective of this asset being sold on the open market, the vendor can continue with his financial, maintain some financial stability. All right. So if there is a necessity, urgent necessity of purchase, then it cannot be considered as market value. Sentimental value to the vendor is to be discarded. So any emotional stake the vendor may have on the asset must not have an influence on the transaction. So it basically means that if, let's say, a vendor is attached to a particular asset or has held on to it for a prolonged period of time, it generates a sense of attachment to the particular asset. So there it starts to influence the decisions that the vendor may make on the transaction. So at some point, if the vendor has an emotional stake in an asset and he puts it up for sale, there is a good chance that he may have a change of heart and say that, okay, I don't want to sell this item right now, and he may roll back on the offer. So what happens is that in such cases, there is a sense of reluctance, and the vendor loses credibility in the market, and he will not be able to sell anything further. He will not be able to sell it. At least he won't be able to sell it to the actual market value. So he loses credibility in that sense. I hope this is clear so far. Okay. Potential use of the value should be considered. Potential use of the asset should be considered. So value of the asset is determined based on its current use, current returns, and the future earning capacity. So we talked about this earlier. Future earning capacity of an asset is very important when we consider how to value a particular asset. So let me give you a simple example over here. The land area of Koramangala until, let's say, the year 97, 98 was quite poor. All right, there were several factors which were affecting its land value. Firstly, because of the graveyard that is near this place called Srinivagelu. Then there is also the economically weaker section housing, which is there near the National Games Village. All right. Post 2000, the value of the asset skyrocketed. What was the reason behind that? Here's a question for the classroom right now. If anyone has an answer, please tell me quickly. Anyone?
So can you repeat the question, please?
So until 97, 98, Kormangala had very poor land value, or rather the value of property was very poor over there. Post 2000, the value skyrocketed. What changed between those two, between that period?
So the development of IT sector and the
not just the development of the IT sector, one particular developmental change drove up the value of Kormangala. What was that?
So is it
While
because of
the IT sector had a particular role to play there, it is a smaller thing. The IT sector boomed around where we have Embassy Golf Links. It boomed around there based on certain market triggers. Okay, so what was this trigger? What was the thing that changed the market value of Kormangala and subsequently the market value of region near Embassy Golf Links? Anyone with an answer? Okay. I don't think most of you guys were even born around that time. So I'll give you the answer directly. The intermediate ring road. The intermediate ring road came up only around 2000. Okay. And the flyover that you see as a part of the loopy de loop over there, that came up in the year 2007. Okay. So that is how delayed the development at that particular region has been. So the intermediate ring road came up only in the year 2000, and it was a brilliant trigger. And once that trigger was identified by the people in and around the areas, they started reassessing the value of their assets. All right, the assets over here being the property in and around this region, which can be considered as a development corridor or a corridor of easy movement. Okay, and based upon that, the value started increasing. Understood?
Yes.
Okay, so here we start looking at the factors which govern market value. Firstly, we have the physical factor, which basically talks about the location, condition, and accessibility of the property. Okay. Actually, right now we're not talking about it exclusively in terms of property over here. We're just talking about it in terms of assets. Assets can be anything. It can even be gold, it can be bullion, it can be cash holdings, anything of that sort. Yeah. The next factor is the legal. Okay, so there are no legal encumbrances, there is no litigation, there is no criminal cases attached to the asset. Then we look at the economic factor. So we talk about the economic factor in terms of the cost of purchase, the life cycle cost, the analysis of returns, and the positioning of the asset in the economic organization of the society. So if you remember from your fifth semester economics, economic organization of society talks about the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector, right? So based on where the asset fits in terms of these organizations, it will take on a different kind of a value. So there will be a cost of purchase, there will be a life cycle cost, and there will be a certain amount of returns. Okay. Then we talk about the scarcity factor. Okay. Availability of this asset in open markets. So if we were talking about land in let's say in regions where it's close to the central business district, availability of the asset is very scarce. Okay. So therefore the scarcity drives up the price. Correct? Then marketability of the asset. So we talk of the asset, we talk of the potential of the asset to be offered to prospective buyers, how attractive it is to people who are interested in purchasing or renting or leasing out this particular asset. Okay. Here we talk about it exclusively in terms of real estate and land value. Okay. Transferability. Again, we've talked about this concept a little earlier. Potential for the asset to be traded on a free market. Okay. Utility talks about the ability of the asset to be used or to be employed to secure a sustainable return. So everything that is covered here as a part of a sustainable return here, it factors back into the economic aspect over here, life cycle cost, right? Utility ties in with life cycle cost over here. Finally, the social. So the ability of an asset to retain visibility in a society. Okay. So here I will take a simpler example, something which has to do with banking and finance. All right. So an asset can be anything that is able to earn a certain amount of returns over a prolonged period of time. Okay. So in the current economic market, assets are basically those which have a certain amount of risk attached to it. Okay. So in the current economic market, if we were to look at an asset, a mutual fund is a positive asset, something which has a greater visibility. All right. So a society is able to understand that mutual funds have certain risks, but the kind of returns that you will get from it are significantly greater. Okay. In the other dimension of it, if you were to look at an asset, there is something which is known as a fixed deposit. Okay. A fixed deposit has a fixed amount of returns irrespective of what the market fluctuations may be. Okay. So you have some set amount of returns which will keep coming to you. Now, based on what your outlook is going to be, you are either going to select the mutual funds or you're going to be selecting the fixed deposits. Okay. So that way, both these assets have a certain visibility in the society. So in the society, mutual funds are the things which have maximum visibility with the younger people. Okay. The fixed deposits are the ones which have visibility with slightly elder people. Okay. People who understand that there is no necessity to take risks, and it is more important for me to have a steady returns. Understood so far? So let's move on. What is valuation then? Here, just to break the monotony over here, so valuation is basically the answer. So we still don't know what the question is. Valuation is basically a concept. It's a necessity which will exist as long as we have assets as a concept. Okay. So when we talk about assets, it is basically the impulse, the human impulse to own something. Okay. To say that, okay, this is particularly mine. I'm going to own it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to spruce it up, make it look really nice, so on and so forth. So assets, as long as they exist as a concept with an assumed value based on socio-economic and cultural factors, valuation will be a necessity. Okay. So valuation is a process by which the value of an asset is estimated. So we talked about value earlier, and the valuation is the process by which we understand what value can be assigned to it. Okay. So for an example over here, sometimes value is as simple as this. You say that how much have you got? That much is the value to it. Okay. So here you have to remember that it is not an exact science with mathematical accuracy. It's basically an intellectual guess based on objective factors. Again, these objective factors which have been highlighted over here are basically those which we use for property or buildings. Okay, so we have to consider location, building type, construction quality, nature of building, cost of land, demand and supply, so on and so forth. Right? So the intellectual guess that we have over here, it varies as well. All right. So a simple way for you to understand it is basically this small little graphic here. So you have your home seen by you, which is over here, which seems like a moderately semi-luxurious and a decent house. All right. So you have a spire and all those things. Then your buyer sees it as a slightly low, something which is of lower potential, right? The person who's lending you money to, let's say, construct or purchase the house, he thinks of it as this. So accordingly, he will give you that much amount of money. The person who is coming to assess, or when we talk about an appraiser over here, we are basically talking about the valuer. The valuer basically thinks your house is a tent in an outback with the rain falling on top of it. All right. And the person who's trying to assess you for taxes thinks you are basically living in the White House. Okay. So different people have different intellectual guesses about what the value of your assets are. I hope this much is clear to you.
Very
Yes, sir.
interesting, sir.
Yeah.
Very interesting example, sir.
So yeah, I mean,
reality, that's it.
It is the reality. So what we consider is as very valuable to us is generally undervalued by the open market, undervalued by the people around us also. So the purposes of valuation. So we already have discussed that valuation assigns a monetary figure to an asset. All right. So this monetary figure or this monetary value is useful in three manners. We talk about it in terms of fiscal, non-fiscal, and bank valuation. Okay. Fiscal is basically anything that has to do with financial it has anything to do with financial output. All right. Financial or economic growth. Non-fiscal is anything that, again, by nature of the previous example, it has anything. It is basically something to do where you are just assessing the value of it without any intention of pursuing any economic changes. All right. And the final one, bank valuation, is where you have specific requirements from a lending institution, and based upon that you will assess the value of your property. Okay, so let us look at it in each. Let us look at each one of these. Okay, fiscal purposes. So the fiscal purposes looks at the levy of tax, property tax by local bodies. So in Bangalore, at least, property tax is levied by the BBMP. Okay, so when BBMP levies the tax, it bases it upon certain preset factors. It looks at the roof of the building. It looks at the floor type of flooring that you have, whether you have an attached parking, whether you have something which is known as the super built up area. Okay, all of these things go into the aspect of valuation. You have to evaluate whether all of the you have to evaluate it based upon these factors, and accordingly property tax is levied by the BBMP. Okay, Fixation of stamp duty for registration. So if a property is transferring hands, based upon the area, based upon its development potential, based upon the kind of development that has already happened, the kind of public infrastructure that has been provided for the particular region, you affix a particular stamp duty for registration. Okay. So you would have noticed that when properties are coming up for sale, you have its value exclusive of stamp duty, registration, so on and so forth. Correct? So the stamp duty is based upon development potential, and that is evaluated only at the time of final occupation certificate. All right. Levy of direct and indirect taxes by the central government. So until the central government decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater by implementing something which is known as the GST, goods and services taxes, we had something which is known as direct and indirect taxes. Can somebody tell me what a direct tax is? Anybody? It's okay if you get it wrong. What is a direct tax?
Sir, is it a kind of tax that you directly pay based on your income and etc.?
Exactly. So your income tax is considered as a direct tax. Okay. Things which are directly imposed upon you, like your property tax, your income tax, all of these things are things which you pay directly to the government or to the local bodies. All right. What are indirect taxes?
So the taxes we pay for food items or something.
Pardon?
The taxes we pay for food items
Yes.
in restaurants.
Yes. So at least
Luxury
in the,
items,
yeah,
food items, purchase of vehicle.
so if you would have noticed, basically when you indulge in any economic activity where you are putting in money to purchase something or buy into a service, buy into a product, the kind of taxes that are levied upon that can be considered as your indirect taxes. So until 2016, I think around 2016, it was called as a VAT, value added tax, or there would be service taxes, so on and so forth, right? Now, post 2016, we've been calling it as a GST. All right. So there will be a central GST and there will be a state GST. Correct? So these things are indirect taxes, which are levied for the purpose of fiscal growth. All right. These contribute to the GDP in a particular manner. So whatever you pay as taxes for the purpose of for these goods gets redirected into welfare schemes and gets redirected into causes which allow for the upliftment of so you guys have already done specification, right? Specification, quantifying quantities and costing. So cost of construction is physical. One more physical purpose is that where you value a particular product, where you value a construction, it allows you to estimate what would be the cost of construction of a similar building, right? Let's move on to non-fiscal purposes over here. Real estate sale and purchase. So yeah, again, it has a fiscal purpose over here, but again, it does not directly contribute in terms of, economic growth. So real estate purchase, then for partition among partners or family members. This happens when you have a large real estate holding and it has to be partitioned between different parties. Okay. Then for rent fixation, so let's say that you are trying to put out a property for the purpose of tenancy or lease. Rent fixation is a very critical aspect. So you have to look at the surrounding areas. You have to look at the kind of facilities that are available, and based upon that, you will fix a rent which will be payable. Okay, so it has to be reasonable so that people will be willing to take it up. So granting compensation under the Acquisition Act. Did someone raise their hands? Okay, let's move on. So the Acquisition Act is basically a way in which the government takes over certain properties for the purpose of developmental activity. Okay. So the Acquisition Act is basically the tool that has been used by the BMRCL, the Bangalore Metro Corporation, to acquire property for the purpose of the construction which is directly related to the metro infrastructure. Okay, so once people acquire this property, how do you compensate for it? Because you're going to lose a little bit of land, right? So how does one compensate for it? I think we've talked about this at some point. I don't remember. Or you might have even dealt with it last year in the last semester in Theory of Urban Design. So how does someone grant compensation under the Acquisition Act? I will give you a simple example over here. The metro corridors can be considered as something known as a mutation corridor. Okay, wherever the metro is occurring, I think the land use has changed and it has become something known as a mutation corridor. So until the time the metro was not there, the FAR in such places was around 1.5 or 1.75 at the max. Okay, so now what has happened is, and the land, the ground coverage was around 30 to 40%. Because the metro construction has taken up a lot of land on either side of the road, because the road has to be widened appropriately because of the metro construction, right? So for the land which has been lost, the compensation is granted in terms of development rights. Okay, so the ground coverage has been increased to around 80 to 90%. And just a moment, sorry. The ground coverage has been increased to around 80 or 90%. And the FAR, FAR or FSI as you want to call it, has been increased to around 4, right? So where was 1.75 and where is 4? So compensation can be granted not necessarily in terms of money. It can also be granted in terms of development rights like this. Understand?
So that 4 is only for 200 meters, no? From the
yeah, for 200 meters.
200
yes.
meters.
Yes. So that
and also government wants to increase the density in these mutation corridors to encourage people using public transport.
Exactly. So this is the way in which non-fiscal purposes of valuation is important. So places around these areas will automatically appreciate in value. All right. We don't use the term increase here. We talk about it in terms of appreciating or depreciating. All right. So in the case of insured property, it becomes very important for us. It becomes a very important tool to assess loss. Okay. So valuation depends upon the age of the building. In the case of buildings itself, let's say we've talked earlier about fire insurance. So assessing loss comes basically in terms of assessing its life cycle, understanding whether or not it was liable to be destroyed in fire, assessing whether there were risks attached to the age of the building, so on and so forth. So valuation helps in that particular manner. Okay. Disproportionate assets. So for people who this comes under the aspect of income tax. Okay. Disproportionate assets is basically the thing where we assess a person's cash flow, his income and his expenditure, and see if there is any if there is any disconjugacy between the two. All right. So in such cases, what happens is that a person's assets are audited. The income tax raids that we keep hearing about, those are basically an audit of the assets that a particular person can possess. And it is basically to assess whether or not a person has been earning these assets legally in a rightful manner, or whether he's been undercutting, whether he's been using underhanded tricks. So these kinds of disproportionate assets, these valuations can happen. If you would have noticed, it happens predominantly in the case of politics. All right, because nowhere else can we see disproportionate assets, right? The final thing, bank valuation. So why do we need to look at valuation for banks? Banks use it to establish collateral security. So let us say that you are taking on a loan of, let's say, 25 lakhs from a bank. They will use the valuation tool to assess the quality of your property, again, all these social development tools, which are basically the infrastructure that are provided, its development potential, so on and so forth, for them to determine collateral security. So they may either choose to take a part of your property, or they may choose to take the whole of your property. So based upon development potential, they will choose particular parts of your property as collateral security. Is this understandable? Let's move on. So to advance the construction of buildings, bank valuation is very important, because at some point or the other, a person may run out of money to continue construction of a building. So let's say a person has a certain corpus which has been set aside for the purpose of building construction, and at some point he runs out. So you use valuation to see how much of the building has been constructed. You see how much of the building is yet to be constructed, and based upon that, you advance a certain amount of money. You provide a certain amount of money, which will push forward the construction. All right. Have you understood this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The third aspect is where we calculate the insurable value of the building. Again, we've talked about it in terms of fire insurance over here. Insurable value is basically assessing a structure, a building, for its ability to sustain or create economic growth over a prolonged period of time. Insurable value has to be that. Okay. So it calculates also the value for the purchase of a property. Again, we talked about it earlier in terms of real estate holding. Then it is also used to assess when accounts become non-performing assets. Okay, these are again tools where we talk about. These are very common when we consider people who take loans and decide to run. Okay, hello Nirav Modi, hello Vijay Mallya, so on and so forth. So if we consider Vijay Mallya's case over here. Non-performing assets are basically those things which do not obtain a sustained amount of return, which will keep it as a self-sustaining model. Okay, so in the case of Vijay Mallya over here, his non-performing assets basically was one thing only, Kingfisher Airlines. All right, where it stopped providing sufficient returns to even pay off the employees. Okay, at that point, any money or any amount of money which has been borrowed from banks to run that particular asset, it can be written off, saying that it is a non-performing asset. Okay, and when it is written off as a non-performing asset, the bare bones, the smaller elements of that non-performing asset can be assessed to get back some amount of money towards the banks. So let us say Kingfisher Airlines is an asset and becomes non-performing. Okay, the parts which are considered as a part of Kingfisher Airlines, which are basically its ground, its premises, of places where it functions out of, its planes, its support infrastructure in terms of your those buses, the servicing hubs, so on and so forth. All of these things come as a part of the valuation. It has to be valued and it has to be sold off, so that a bank can get back at least a little amount of money from the non-performing asset. All right, is this clear?
Yes.
Bank valuation also uses it for calculating mortgage. All right, mortgage is basically the interest or the amount of money that you have to pay for the purpose of loans that you may have taken. Okay, all right, so today's class has basically ended. Here we're going to give you out your assignment. All right, so there is one thing which we have not covered over here, and I expect you guys to cover it. Okay, we've assigned each one of you a definition of assigned you a particular value. Okay, there's a whole list of them in the book which are available. Okay, so each one of you has been assigned a particular definition. You guys will try to explain what each one of those values are. All right, so you will complete the definition and then you will explain it to us. You explain to us your understanding of the assigned value by meaning of a cartoon. Okay, somehow I've started to come back to the realization that one of the best and the most easy ways of understanding anything is through a cartoon. Okay, so you are encouraged to be as original, humorous, and sarcastic as you can be. All right, whatever you do, the cartoon can be either a single panel, which can be something like this, okay. I hope this is conveying to you exactly what we are looking for. Or it can be a running strip. All right, most illustrious example for this. Again, I will be looking at your assignments over here. We both will, Dominic sir and I will be looking at your assignments over here purely in terms of your originality. Okay, so you guys can actually explore mediums of expression over here. You can use multiple different media. You can use something as simplistic as this, or you can use colors, anything. All right, but it is essential that you guys treat it as an original piece. Okay, you have to use your heads over here. All right, okay. So we will close with this today. The recorded session will be available on the classroom once this class ends, and you guys can go back to it and refer to it whenever it is that you wish to. And the dates have been assigned for the assignment, the return of the assignments. So please stick to it as much as possible. I know it's a little difficult for a whole lot of people over here. So as much as possible, you can consider this as a distraction if you wish to, but also we want to ensure that you guys are kept as upbeat as possible. Okay, so stay safe, take care of yourselves, no risks, nothing. Okay.
Sharad sir,
Yes.
just a minute. I have a doubt regarding this compensation by the government in case of road expansion and metro corridors, mutation corridors.
Yes, sir.
There's TDR, transfer of development rights, as per the
Yes,
zones
that is also a
come
very
into play.
critical tool. That is also a very critical tool over here.
That certificate.
Yes. So transfer of development rights, TDR, is basically an option where, let's say, the entirety of a property gets acquired for the purpose of government construction. The government offers extra development rights in another property that the person may hold. So let's say a person A has one property next to a metro line, and it gets acquired for the purpose of construction of either the RIP track or the construction yard of the metro corporation. Okay, so that the entirety of the property has been lost. Now let us say that a similar person A has a similar property someplace else, which is away from metro construction. So what
zone
the
A, B, and C. I think zone
Sir?
A, B, and C. Zone
Yes.
A, B, and C. Yeah.
Yeah. So based upon which zone the other property lies, you have certain amount of TDR which is offered on that particular property. Okay, so if it is, let's say, zone A, if it is intensely developed, you get a transferable development rights where you are allowed to build much more than permitted. Then B and C, depending upon the regions where the property is located, you have different development rights. So basically, the idea is that you're compensating not in terms of money, but in terms of development potential. Okay. Is that clear?
I would like to add.
Yes,
if
sir.
you have lost, if you have the government is compensating in zone C, you can't sell that TDR certificate to zone A. You can only utilize in zone C. Whereas
Yes.
if you have lost property in zone A, like say CBD of Bangalore, then you can use that certificate, and that certificate is very valuable because especially for commercial developments, builders are it's a very valuable certificate. It
Yes.
costs in crores. So that certificate, if you have acquired in zone A, like a CBD, you can make use of it in zone A or B or C. But if you have acquired the certificate in zone B, you can't utilize in zone A. You can only utilize in zone B and C. So there is a lot of TDR has been sold, traded in the market, in the real
Yes.
estate market, especially for commercial developments. It's not viable for residential developments because the value of those TDRs are very high.
Yeah.
But for commercial purposes, yes.
Excellent, sir. So I hope this has been clear to you guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay then. So I think we can close this session here, and please look out for the assignment. It will reach you at 11 o'clock. So once you receive the assignment, you guys can start working on it. And the due date is for Wednesday midnight. So hopefully we shall see you next week. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for the valuable session. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank
Good
you,
day.
sir.
Good day.
Yeah.
So there's just one more doubt I have.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, sir, is non-physical and non-fungible the same thing?
Non-fungible. Again, are you coming from the from your understanding of NFTs?
Yes.
Okay. No, they are not the same. They are not the same. Non-fungible is basically something. Fungible is anything which can be changed. Okay. The use of the term fungible is something which can be changed. So in the case of NFTs, we are basically talking about a. I'm not too sure about the concept myself, but basically it is a token. It's a kind of thing which cannot be transferred from one person to another. It cannot be changed from one type to another. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
So basically, if you have an NFT for an art piece, it can be used only for similar art pieces. If you gain NFTs from art pieces, you can use it only for art pieces. I think that may be a kind of a restriction over there. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that sure, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, well, I will have to get back to you on that because
Okay.
I don't understand it fully myself. Okay.
Yes.
So perhaps we can have I'll probably have some sort of a session where we can explain to you what an NFT is and whether it makes sense for you guys to think about investing in NFTs. Right?
Yes.
All right, then. Let's call it a day today. Thank you all for
Yes.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers. See you.
Thank you, sir.